28 years later, my thoughts on the film. If you plan to watch this movie, if you're a fan of the franchise and all that, I do recommend you try to avoid hearing what other people say about it. Go in blind and get your own. It's a very plot-wise, not much happening in this movie. And it's also weird tonally. It kind of shifts around as the movie progresses, but there's not a lot there plot-wise, so there's not much to spoil. But symbolically, there's a lot going on. There is a lot going on. So we'll start with the plot, the literal part, which is it's basically like a coming of age story set in a zombie apocalypse world. You have this 13-year-old kid or 12-year-old kid, whatever, however, around that age, named Spike, and he's going out into the world. He's leaving his safe little village to go out into the world and face the monsters and the horror in that. His mom has cancer. He tries to get her help, but they find out she has cancer. They euthanize her, which is there's like a very like kind of explicitly pro euthanasia message in the movie, which is a bit weird. It's also interesting timing because they just voted on this to allow this in the UK in Parliament. So the UK is going the way of Canada now, where their socialized healthcare system is going to start killing people more and more and more, just like they do in Canada. So it's kind of interesting that that was in the movie coming out at the same time as UK is like legally headed in that direction. I'm not saying that that was intentional or planned, but it was kind of an interesting coincidence. And there's not much plot wise. Like that's basically it. It's kind of, so here's the thing. I actually, on the surface literal level, I did like the movie as like an adventure movie for young boys, which they don't make stuff like this much anymore. Everything's made for like 40-year-old children, right? All movies now are made for 40-year-old children, which let me come back to what I was talking about. But so there, you have this Superman movie. It's coming out, the James Gunn Superman, and people are talking about this on Twitter. And the movie review bros are all talking about how shit this is, how much it sucks, right? I'll play this little clip here to give you an idea.
What is this? Crypto! What the hey, dude? I thought you destroyed the whole Superman robots. I thought I told you to keep an eye on him.
We feed the canine, but he is unruly. And he realizes we are not flesh and blood and couldn't in our heart of hearts.
So anyway, okay, so it's goofy, right? And so then the 40-year-old children are mad on Twitter because comic book movies are supposed to be dark and adult and serious, right? Ever since Christopher Nolan did The Dark Knight, it's like your comic book movie has to be dark. And then you had Todd Phillips' Joker, which was the peak dark, serious, adult comic book movie. And so the more your movie is like Joker, the better it is. And the less it is like that, the worse it is. But comic book movies are supposed to be made for like 10-year-old boys. They're not supposed to be made for 40-year-old men who want to be like, whoa, Superman's gooning to like a porn. This is so grown up. Damn. I watched Andor and the Stormtrooper the girl or what, I haven't seen it, but the people are saying something like that. You know what I mean? And it's like Star Wars is supposed to be for 10-year-old boys. This shit, not everything has to be for you. There's this like the great flattening has happened with media where it's all about hitting the widest audience possible. It used to be back in the day when I was a kid, movies had like target audiences and it was well understood who the target audience was. So it's like, this is a movie for like 12 to 15-year-old boys. This is a movie for 9 to 12-year-old boys. This is you know what I mean? They've kind of like got away from that by trying to make everything for everyone. And so you have like adult innuendo in children's films and shit like that. I remember going to Zootopia with my like 4-year-old daughter at the time, seeing all these adults in line to go see Zootopia with no children. And I was like, what is going on? I was like, what the fuck is happening? You know, that's just normal now. It's expected. So the reason I bring that up is because this movie is going to be a good movie for like 13 to 15-year-old boys. See a kid go off on an exciting, scary adventure. You know, it's like, it's that kind of thing. And I like it at that level. Okay. Having said that, the symbolism of this movie is crazy. It's everywhere. You just know when you're watching it that there's all this like subtextual theme shit happening. You're not even necessarily sure what it's trying to say, but you know it's trying to say something. And one of the most immediately noticeable and jarring things about the film is that everyone is white. Every single person in the movie is white. It is the most conspicuously white movie since like Dunkirk and The First Man, but those were like historical films where it made sense for them to be white. This one, you're like, wait, hold on. Why is everyone white? What is he saying? What's going on? What does this mean? Calum had that YouTuber, Calum, that British guy, he had a viral tweet where he said it was like, it's a timeline split. So because the rage virus ruined the UK back in 2001, when 28 Days Later came out, they never had mass immigration, so that's why everyone you see is white, which is kind of a, you know, that's an interesting potential explanation. But obviously 28 Days Later, like 1/4 of the cast was black, or of the protagonists at least, they had a black woman in that movie. Obviously there were non-white people in the UK before 2021, so it seems kind of weird that like that doesn't happen by accident. That's not random. They didn't say to like the casting agency, hey, we need 200 extras to be zombies, and they just randomly, everybody was white who showed up, and everybody in the town was white. That was a conscious decision, but why did he do this? What is he trying to say? Now the movie starts off not set in the current time of 28 years later, but set back when the outbreak first reached Scotland, and you have these kids in a room watching Teletubbies. The mom comes freaking out. She's like, everybody stay in here, don't leave, right? You know as an audience member, you know what's happening. You know the shit's hit the fan with the infected. The boy, he leaves the room. There's zombies killing people. He gets away. He runs to the church. He finds the vicar there, who he calls his dad. He's like, dad. So the priest at the church is his dad, and he's like, they're coming, like help, help, fuck, man. The dad's like, they're praying, and the dad is like crazy, and he's like, yes, this is salvation, like this is a glorious day, son, and I'm immediately like groaning. My immediate initial reaction is like, oh, kid, the crazy Christian guy who, is insane and delusional in his like religious fervor. Like, yeah, never seen that one before. Real original kind of thing. But then I'm thinking, hang on a second. Because I just read Camp of the Saints, and I talked about how the church is criticized for their role that they played in mass immigration. And rightly so. We all know Christians, modern day Christians, love their refugees, feel a duty and a need, feel a Christian need. And so Christians, a lot of modern day Christians feel like you need to flood your country with these third world refugees, these foreign hordes, and that's how you are saved. Like, that's your duty as a Christian. And so if you think of the infected zombies as these third world foreign invaders, then the priest in this scene could be a stand-in for that Camp of the Saints style criticism of the church. Probably not what he meant by that, but it did occur to me that could be an interpretation of that. Then the priest, he gives his son a cross. He says, always hold on to this. And the kid crawls into like a little like crawl space or whatever. And he goes, Father, why have you forsaken me? Which that really rubbed me the wrong way when he said that. I was like, oh, that's weird. That's like he's Jesus now, this kid saying Jesus's words. That was just weird. And it made me just feel uncomfortable and uneasy. Like, what is this movie? I didn't like that part. The kid's like, Father, why have you forsaken me? The zombies are running up above him. And I was like, this is not right. I don't know why my gut. It was like, this is wrong. So then you go to the 28 years later, you have Spike living in this little village. They have a village on an island. It's walled off. There's only one way in, and they have archers constantly on guard to keep the village safe, right? And he's going to go out for his first time. He's going to go to the mainland and hunt zombies with his dad. And then, so they're going along. Things kind of go wrong. I won't spoil it because it doesn't really matter much. But eventually they meet this guy, Ralph Fiennes or Ray Fiennes, whoever this guy is. He's like a doctor who's kind of gone native, and he's built this bone temple. There's also some weird symbology, like in the village. On the thumbnail of this video, you see the mask. There's a chick with like the mask, and it's got like a arrow in the head, and so it's supposed to like represent the infected, but there's something very kind of like pagany and folk religion-y about it, especially with all these movies that have come out lately, like Midsummer and that kind of thing. And I started to like think about this as like, is this guy, Danny Boyle, is he trying to throw fuel on the fire in this like online culture war that's happening between right-wing Christians and right-wing pagans, you know, the nationalist communities who have this big dividing factor that they argue about all the time, which is religion and Christianity? And is he trying to say like Christianity is bad and paganism is, or like folk religion is like good, and if you return to that, everybody's white because everybody in the movie's white? Again, maybe a reach, but it's like this is what I was thinking watching the movie. I was like, it's kind of weird. Now, having said that, the bone, and so I only really actually knew this because somebody said it on Twitter, but the bone temple thing actually is kind of Catholic symbolism, because there's like this Catholic bone church in somewhere, the bone church, the bone ossuary, the Sedlic ossuary Catholic church in Czechia. So maybe it's not meant to be that. I don't feel like a lot of people would know that, but maybe the whole pagan thing is just totally me just misinterpreting it. But there's one final weird thing that happens. So at the end of the movie, the kid who was given the crucifix by his father, Spike meets him now as an adult, and he's wearing like a tracksuit, and like he's dressed up like Jimmy Savile, the pedo. He has blonde hair. He looks like Jimmy Savile. His name is Jimmy. And he comes and like fights the zombies off. Him and his crew of chavs come and fight the zombies off to save Spike. And it's fucking weird, man. They're fighting like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Like they're doing like weird backflips and shit. I was laughing so hard. I was just like, because it was already weird with this whole scene where Spike climbs up and he's like puts the skull on top of the pile of I leaned over to Allison. I was like, this movie's fucking weird. And Allison was like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. She didn't like it. And then you have these chavs and tracksuits come out, and it's weird. It's like comedic, like jarringly comedic tonal shift that was very bizarre. But noticeably, this guy, Jimmy, he's wearing the crucifix upside down. And there's a very explicit close-up shot so you don't miss it. Like he's wearing the crucifix upside down. Satanic. So what is that about? And the movie ends. Now, again, I was interpreting this as because I saw somebody on Twitter say, 28 years later is like a subversive right-wing movie about how we're going to save the UK from the foreign hordes by teaming up with the chavs and like rejecting boomerism, basically. So we're rejecting the boomerism of the priest who loves the refugees, and we're teaming up with like the satanic chavs to like get rid of the foreign hordes. And I was like, man, I don't think I like this movie. I don't think I like it. Feels like very anti-Christian, but I don't know, man. I could be wrong. So turns out they've already filmed a sequel, and it's going to be out in January of 2026. So in like 6 months, the sequel is hitting theaters. And you also have to know Danny Boyle and what kind of guy he is, right? And so, as a lot of people said in the chat, Wyatt Stagg has a video about 28 Days Later and how that is a very, very anti-white film. I don't actually like necessarily agree with everything he says in that. I love Wyatt Stagg. I think he's a genius. And even when I don't agree with him, I love to hear his interpretations, but I do think he reaches, but it's really good to listen to. But that's worth noting that this guy might just be like super. He made Slumdog Millionaire, which is another like white guilt movie, basically designed to make white people feel guilty that they don't live in a shithole. And he recently came out and said that he couldn't make Slumdog Millionaire today because it would be cultural appropriation and it would have to be made by an Indian person. So he's got this weird, like white people can't steal other people's cultures by making movies. He made Train Spotting, which I've mentioned, like as a young person, that movie made me want to do drugs. That movie, Train Spotting, made drug use look so cool to me as a young person. But going back and rewatching as an adult, I was like, I was retarded. Like, this obviously looks horrible. I'm not saying he did that intentionally, but that's the effect it had on me as like a 12, 13-year-old kid watching Train Spotting. I didn't make me want to do heroin, but it did make me just the whole like drug culture, I had this romantic view of it. So knowing who Danny Boyle is, he doesn't seem like he's our guy. Having said that, I'm going to reserve my final judgment until I watch the sequel. I need to see where he's going with it because there's too much up in the air. I've seen people like lots of different interpretations on it too, right? Like, so this guy is saying, I have so many thoughts, mostly how fucking exhilarating it is to see two 55 and 68-year-old men make such a fucking excoriating rejection of traditionalists, anti-intellectuals, Brexiteers, the far right of the good old. So this guy watched the movie and thought the whole thing was like a rejection of tradition. So the movie is full of symbolism and it's very open to interpretation. But those are my thoughts on it. Basically, that it seemed like there is the Christians and pagans are being like pitted against each other in a way. So you guys watch it. Let me know what you think. I'm going to wait till I see the sequel before I form a final judgment on this movie because there's just too much up in the air. But I did kind of like that it was sort of bold in that it was, it was so weird that was like a bold choice. So I did kind of appreciate that aspect of it. Hey, what up, Familama Ding Dong? It is I, your boy LP, and the clip you just watched is from my live stream show, The Daily Cope, which I do 4 to 5 times a week on Rumble, Odyssey, and my other YouTube channel. I will link all of them below if you want to check it out. And thanks for watching. Hope you're having a great day, and I will catch you on the flip side. Peace out.